welcome back to another episode of Wonderfully Homemade. I'm Jenny.
And I'm Landis.
And this is Katie Ruley, our special guest today. We're so excited to have our very first guest, and Katie is going to be telling us a little bit about her new Enneagram consultation practice.
Yes. Okay, well, first of all, thank you guys for having me. This is fun. Well, my name is Katie Ruley, and I've been in Tulsa my whole life, other than college.
Love that.
And it's a great place to be. And I married my high school sweetheart.
Oh.
We've been together 24 years and have 4 awesome children.
Yes, you do.
So my background it goes way back to high school. I went to Bishop Kelly here in town, took a psychology class, and fell in love immediately. Like, you know how some kids know what they want to do going into college, but not very many kids? I was one who knew, never once questioned it. Like, psychology was my path, the human mind, human behavior, human relations, all that stuff. So went in, studied psychology, got my bachelor's at OU, and then I went on and got my master's in human relations. Because I love not only the human mind, but how people use their minds to relate with each other, like taking it to the next level. And got out and I did some human resources work at St. John here in town. And then little babies started coming.
Oh.
So had my children and stayed at home with them. And I'm still at home with them mostly, but through the past, I guess I've been a mom for 22 years now.
Wow.
I've kept my toes wet with things. I've led many women's groups. I've done premarital counseling.
And then you had the idea to create this consultation practice.
So about 3 years ago, I'm a 1. We'll just get that out there. So ones love self-improvement. They love to improve themselves, others, in the world. So you will always find me with a podcast or a book or something that is going to help me become a better person. That's just I haven't read fiction. Oh my gosh, probably since I was 12 girl. Like, I don't even know what that is. Why would I do that? Seriously. So I was listening to I think it was a Bible study leader talking about, and it's been a big theme with them. The Enneagram, I'm like, what is that word? And then I was upset that I didn't know what it was.
So you had to learn it.
How does a psychology major not know about a personality test that's kind of the rage right now? So I started digging and I'm talking digging. I probably have read 20 books and hundreds of podcasts, and I was determined to find my number. And it took me 6 months with a master's in psychology. That's how tricky it can be, but that also adds to the excitement of the journey and what all the treasures you find along the way, which is a huge part of it. I think we all think we're just going to go in and find this number and but it's a journey.
Yeah. So what do you feel like knowing your number, how does that help a person to know?
Oh my gosh, huge. So the Enneagram is like, it gets to the soul of who you are. So most personality tests, you get this description and you're like, okay, but there's nothing to do with it. The Enneagram gives you a tool to go forward and gives you something to do. You know, and a lot of things also, like therapy and things, will tell you to get rid of part of you. The Enneagram is going to teach you to embrace part of you, and the part of you that is unique to you.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And you just when you find your number, this little ding goes off. That's pretty uncomfortable at first.
Yes.
And really the way to figure out your number is the one that makes you unsettled, embarrassed, maybe squirmish, kind of like, ew, how'd they know that about me?
You feel exposed.
You feel exposed. You feel like someone's reading your diary.
Yeah.
And then you start to think, oh my gosh, other people are like this? Like, it's been the most phenomenal thing I've ever studied.
What do you think sets the Enneagram personality test apart from other personality tests? Like, I'm thinking, the first thing that comes to my mind is like Myers-Briggs.
Right, Myers-Briggs.
Maybe because that's the other
was
one that
popular.
I know. That one was really popular.
And they're wonderful.
Yeah.
For only so long.
Yeah.
You won't hear someone talking about Myers-Briggs in 8 years.
For
It
sure.
really helped me, navigate this, or helped me with parenting, or for me, I first started testing it out in my own home. Like, is this thing applicable, or is this just kind of a self-journey thing?
Yeah.
And, as a believer, our job is to love others. And that's where this tool to me is different, because most of us don't know anyone else's Myers-Briggs 4 letters or their disc number. We don't know those things, and so it won't help us relate to them better, back to human relations. So as I started to figure out my family's numbers, I had this compassion grow. I can't even put it into words, the compassion I had for each of my children, to think, oh my gosh. I mean, we all know we're wired a certain way, but this goes to a new level of understanding. It gives it language that we didn't have before, and it's just, the aha moments are endless. It has been around, I'm talking ancient history. That's why it's called an ancient human assessment tool. It's been around forever.
So what caused it to resurface?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it came to the States in the 1970s. And so back then we didn't have all this social media and computers and all that. And they started teaching it to spiritual directors, and they were asked to keep it hush-hush. Wow. Only teach it to a fellow spiritual director. This isn't to be taught in public, this isn't to be taught in schools.
Goodness.
Yeah, so they started doing that, and then Richard Rohr, who's a famous Catholic priest, got it. He was taught it, and he loved it, and he started teaching it more publicly. And then he actually wrote a book about it. And so the 1970s and then further, and then it was like, early 2000s, things started to come out. And so the teacher I follow, she's known about it about 30 years. So like 1990 is when I would say that more publications started coming. And so it's been around a long time because it actually works.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is it rooted in Christianity at all, or what's that background?
It's not, and so that's another thing. I'm glad you brought that up. A lot of Christians are leery of it because it's a 9-pointed star.
Yeah.
And it looks kind of like
kind of scary.
I can see the first time I looked
right,
at it.
like witchcraft
That's
but really for me, and that's one reason I really want to pursue it, is I think it pairs up perfectly with the Bible. So you think about, the 9 fruits of the Spirit. And so you compare, one of my favorite Enneagram books, The Sacred Enneagram, he compared that up with each of the 9 types. And I feel like each of the 9 types represents a character trait of God. And we each excel in that, because we don't each excel in just one fruit of the Spirit. We're asked to have all the fruit of the Spirit. But we do each excel in a gift and a way of seeing the world. And this uncovers that. It's beautiful. It's really beautiful.
Can you give us an example of a way that it has helped in either your family or in your marriage?
So my husband's a 3, and that's an achiever.
What?
And what you know?
I'm a 3.
So Thatcher's a 3 as well.
Yeah. We always joke that
Can you
Judy has
believe
a
that?
I know, right?
And it's 3.
Yeah. And so I'm a 1, and so we've been together 30 years. And I'm a get to know you kind of guy. Like, I thought I knew everything about him. I mean, I thought we don't have much else to learn about each other. And we started studying this, and even last night I kept asking him questions. I think about new things all the time. So 3s can struggle getting in touch with their emotion because they think they're loved for what they do instead of who they are.
Yeah. And I identify so deeply with, because I am a 3, and I genuinely feel like what I do is why people like me and want to be around me. And so it's good for me to know that, so that I remind myself, that's not true, and the people that truly love me regardless of what I'm doing. But if I don't actively think about that, then I just fall into, I gotta do stuff so that so I feel accepted and loved.
Yes. So like one of the famous quotes with the Enneagram is, it doesn't put you in a box, because a lot of people will rear up and say, well, I don't want to be typed and put in a box. But what it does is it shows you the box that you're in and how to get out of it.
That's good.
I mean, as ones, man, we got some boxes.
Yeah,
we all have different boxes. But it shows us how to get out of that and be free and be who we are created to be.
Yeah. So what would you say is maybe a common misconception about the Enneagram?
I would say definitely like the stereotypes. I struggle with those because no one wants to be stereotyped.
Yeah.
And I think, they say that people are using the Enneagram as like a parlor game. And so as someone who deeply believes in it, it is hard to hear people say, oh, well, I took a quick test online and I'm this, and they're running with it.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, it's so much richer.
Yeah.
It's kind of like faith, like you know, if you only knew John 3:16 and that's it, that would be great, but not rich and deep and bring you all the treasures that the Bible has to offer. So it really does remind me of the Bible, because the more I learn, the more I realize I have to learn. Like, it's a self-awareness. I would say that's a big description, to become self-aware, which is really hard to do.
Yes.
If we're made in God's image, and if we can get to the true self of who we are, then we become even more like God. So that's another goal of mine. Like I talked about learning to love others better, but I want to be who God created me to be.
For your Enneagram journey, so you said that you first thought you were a 3, right? And then transitioned into a 1. So can you tell us a little bit about
I'm glad you brought that
your
up.
journey to where you got?
That's a great question, because the initial reaction to this is, oh gosh, I'm going to look at my behaviors and what I do, and I'm going to check a list and I'll know it. And so when I did that, when I looked at just traits of each number, if I'd counted them out, I had more 3. So it made sense. Okay, I'm a 3. But as I learned about the Enneagram, it's about your motivation, your underlying motivation, which no one else can tell you. So that's a really important thing, you guys. You cannot type other people.
That makes me think about the first time that I took the Enneagram test. I sat and I forget what I even ended up being, but it didn't read right. And so I was thinking about when I was answering the questions, I'm like, I was not.
You're like, I only care about others.
Well, exactly. When you're reading it, like you want to say like, oh, of course I only care about what other people, you know, and I want to help others, and I want to do this, and I think we have this idealized version of ourselves in our head, and
or
when
what
you're
we're
answering,
supposed to be.
yes, and so when I'm answering the questions, I'm like, this isn't even, I mean, I want to be able to answer it honestly, but it took me 2 times taking it for me to be like, actually, I'm probably closer to not. You know, it's just, it's a self-reflecting thing. You have to be honest.
You really do. So back to, you know, I was torn between a 3 and a 1. So for me, I had to start, and I knew I had some 1 tendencies for sure. But let's think about what I mentioned earlier. I was fighting like the ooh. I don't really want to be that.
Totally.
And so for me, the clincher to helping me was listening to podcasts. So one of the big teachings called the narrative Enneagram, and it's by listening to stories. So when you know, I might share a couple stories you guys did, you might resonate with that, or think, oh no, I wouldn't do that. Great tip on figuring out your number is mark out the ones you know you're not. Just push those aside, and usually people are left with 2 or 3, and then delve into those. Big tip too is to think, how do I react when I get bad news?
Wow.
How did you react when you found out you're going to be quarantined?
Yeah.
How did you react when you knew this crazy pandemic started? That's a telltale sign.
Okay, that makes me think about wings. You know, how do you feel about the wings? What's your wing? And my question about it, I guess, too, is it having the wing, is it just like a smaller part of your personality that comes up sometimes, or what does that really mean?
I love talking about the wings, and they're also, you know, it can get confusing. And when I first started, I did what most people do. Oh, I'm a 3 with a 1 wing, or I'm a 1 with a 3 wing, and I thought I would just pick my second highest.
Yeah.
Doesn't work that way. So you have the star, and you've got 9 at the top, and so your wing. So if I'm a 2, then my wing's going to be a 1 or a 3. Right. If I'm a 5, my wing's got to be a 6 or a 4. Your wing has to hit on either side of your number. No ifs, ands, or buts.
That's amazing.
For me, I feel like everyone does have at least 1 wing, and sometimes they're evenly winged.
Wow.
Sometimes it's like barely little wings, and then
I love it.
You know, some people, like I think about my youngest is an 8, and I mean he's just 8 with some little 8 wings and maybe some 7, but no 9. And that can change.
I was gonna say, maybe he grows to develop.
That can change because an example of that is my dad is an 8, and as he's grown, you know, into being an older, mature man, his 9 wing is like huge. But growing up, I hardly ever saw that 9 wing. Dan teaches a lot of times a wing that you were weak in in 20s, 30s, 40s becomes stronger. So I'm praying for my 9-wing to come on out. Back to the testing. Christian women are prone to answer as Jews.
Jenny and I talk about this all the time.
Yeah.
We're like, any girl that is a Christian, great girl,
She's
just
like,
loves
I'm
to
a
sit and be
two.
like, I'm a two.
Yeah, the
A
helper,
true
the
two.
giver.
Yes.
A
One
true-
of my roommates, I was lucky enough to, one of my roommates was a true two.
Who?
Sophia.
Oh,
And
yes.
I mean, it's a rare breed, you know.
Yeah.
It's such, it feels
But
like.
we all want to be a two.
We
yeah,
do.
just the most
Yeah.
selfless, altruistic.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, they're warm and loving, and they're the ones bringing cookies to the, the
Yeah.
school sale.
Yeah. So from just your knowledge of Enneagram and your time learning all about it, can you give us just some maybe facts, some common mistypes, maybe just information that has stuck out to you about the Enneagram?
Yes, yeah. So some things that come to mind is your number never changes.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, so a lot of things that you study, you're like, okay, well I'm gonna migrate into this, or I'm gonna work up to that. So your number, I truly believe you're born your type. And they say by 5, it's pretty honed in. And this is important for parents, because I know all of us are like, oh my gosh, I wanna figure out my kids. They say not to do that until age 14 to 16.
Wow.
And it's really, a lot of times not recommended until they're 18. Now I have used it in my family, and my youngest is 13, but he was just such a strong 8. There was no question. I mean, you could meet him in 5 minutes and be like, you pretty much know what he is.
That's awesome.
So it's been huge for me. Something that really helped bring it to more understanding for me is to think about each type as a color. So let's say ones are blue. So think about blue. We've got navy, we've got periwinkle, we've got teal, turquoise, baby blue. So you and I might be blue, but you might be teal and I might be navy.
Totally.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's different shades within each type.
That's
That
a
makes
really good
me,
way to
yeah,
look at
that
it.
makes
And
me
it
think
kind
too,
of-
because I think some people, they think they're one, like, let's say they think they're a 1, but then they know somebody who's a 1 and they're like,
the
well,
exact same.
or the, opposite, they're like, I don't feel like I'm anything like that
Right.
person.
Bingo.
And so maybe because they don't know their inner motivations and their thoughts and their whatever,
Totally.
but I think it can have them being like, well, maybe I'm not a 1 because I don't feel like I'm anything like their personality.
Exactly.
So kind of as we close this up, is there anything that you'd want to add just for people to understand maybe a little bit more about the Enneagram?
Yes, I think one really important thing would be when you're looking at these types and looking at their motivations, again, not behaviors, motivations, and only you know your motivation. When you look at those, what is best about each one is also worse about each one. So your gift is also like your sin. And so, thinking about us as ones, what we can bring to the world to improve the world and help the world. Well, part of the hard part of that is we can be judgmental or criticize or what's best about us is also worse about us, but we're not trying to get rid of that. We're trying to become self-aware about it and how to use that gift in the best way that we can.
Yeah. If I'm someone that's wanting to try to figure out what my number is, how do I go about that?
Okay, so this is news most people don't want to hear. Taking online tests is not the best way.
Wow.
We just want
Yeah.
to take that
Yeah.
test and
have it
ta-da!
Yeah.
It just doesn't work that way. So there are a couple that I could recommend that are online that you can do, and you can start with those. So one is called the RHETI, R-H-E-T-I. It's the Riso Hudson. It's 140 questions. It's $12, and it's fairly accurate. And then I think the best place is just to start getting rid of the ones you know that you're not.
Okay.
And then we did mention that earlier,
Yeah.
just delving into 2 or 3 and trying them on. And then, for me, everyone learns differently. Some people like to read, and there is a plethora of books. There used to not be, but now there is, and they just keep coming out. A few to think about is The Road Back to You by Ian Crum. They call it the primer, because they were kind of the first 2 in our decade to get information out. And then what I liked even more is their follow-up called The Path Between Us. And that paired with The Road Back to You, you start learning how the 2 react. And when you read those stories, you'll see how a number reacted and you'll be like, oh, you resonate.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's what I would have done.
Yeah.
Or you thought you were a 5 and you see what the 5 did and you're like, I wouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
To wrap everything up, this has been really, really awesome, and I know a lot of people are going to want to get in touch with you. How would they do that?
Okay, so right now the best way to get in touch with me is on my Instagram page. It's called Enlighten Enneagram.
Okay, and we'll put that in the description for you guys so you can go.
And hopefully by next week we'll have a website up
Great.
and we're working on all that.
Your Instagram, will that be a great place to kind of get little tidbits about it?
Yes, and so this week I'm hoping to add some stuff about how to find out more about your number.
Great.
So I list some basic information, and so each week I'll add different things.
Awesome. That'll be a great follow.
Yeah.
I'm excited.